flagship areas of focus and services has always been resource management. We've got our just-in-time resourcing approach to the domain, and we continue to go from just consulting, advising numerous global organizations to actually, again, it manifesting in the Resource Management Institute, which we have recently launched, and we'll talk a little bit more about at the end. But again, we really, our focus has always been helping service and project-based organizations get better at what they do, from strategy all the way to execution. And resource management, as I said, has been a very prominent element of our work for our entire decade of existence. That's me, Mark LaCroix. I'm one of the managing partners here at RTM Consulting, also lead our professional services practice. Our special guest is Rob Spreadberry. Glad to have him. He's Global Operations Leader for NCR Corporation. He'll tell you a little more about NCR and their situation there, but really glad to have Rob. Known Rob for a while, and NCR is a big, global, complex service delivery organization. And also speaking at the end is Randy Mislovic, and he is our RMI Managing Director. He's going to provide a little more insights as to the RMI and what it's about, and if you're not already involved, how you can be more involved. All right, so without further ado, let's get into some of the trends as we see them. Trend number one, the SaaS delivery models changing the characteristics of projects affecting resource management processes. So SaaS, of course, the transformation going on in the solutions that the companies and organizations are using, and of course now the projects are starting to take on a little bit of a different texture. So this is what I call the incredible shrinking project. So to me, the broad-based characteristic of what's going on as a result of SaaS-based solutions going in the place of fairly resource-heavy premise-based solutions is, for some reason, and I think I know, but the projects seem to be shrinking. Now, the reason I kind of spook this a little bit is because I think it's a bit of a fallacy, meaning projects aren't necessarily getting smaller, but their structure and characteristics are, right? So there's the thought that they're getting smaller, but the reality is they're getting flatter, not necessarily shorter. I think there has been a bit of a wave to think that, oh, it's real easy to slam a cloud solution. It's already installed. Yeah, there's some steps that can be shortened, but the reality is all the same things around defining requirements, doing design, configuring systems, testing them, deploying them, getting the organization to adopt them. Those things have not disappeared. And so while the projects may seem to be, quote unquote, smaller, I don't think they are, but they are changing in their characteristics, specifically getting flatter. The other thing, though, that the SaaS solutions are allowing or fostering more for project characteristics, more template-based, a little less reliant on cowboys and heroes, right? Because you have a shared installed platform. It's not a lot of custom clone and go or a lot of custom development going on there more. You've got a much more rigid boundaries by which the project's getting executed and the solution's being implemented. So a little less cowboy, a little more structure. This also type of solution fosters more multi-phase versus the big bang. The days of getting Oracle ERP in, granted those might be phased, but those are major phases of work, and you might say a big bang to just get that first deployment out there. Whereas SaaS solutions allow for a more multi-phase. And what that does create, though, is future phase uncertainty. In other words, what do the future phases call for? How big are they? What's the timing of those phases? Do we need the same people, or is it taking on some different skill sets? And then, it leaves a lot, too, for post-implementation work. There's not always a clean handoff in SaaS solution implementations to get to the support side or the customer success side. Sometimes there is, again, a longer trickle and trail of post-implementation work that tends to come with these. And last, the staffing plans, just from an observational standpoint, of course, something we're trying to address with resource management, they've become a little more fluid. And the staff plans themselves that project managers have to maintain, they don't always follow the same rigor, or they're starting to break some of the paradigms or rules of how we allocate people. So how does this affect resource management? Well, simply said, smaller assignments equal more churn. There's definitely more turnover per person. You know, we, of course, as resource managers, love the 1-year assignment where we just stick somebody out there for a project or even a client, and they're spoken for on that one line of work for a whole year. But we know that's not realistic to most of our projects, but in some cases this is getting even smaller. I don't know, to what point is getting down to the hour level. It gets to be a little unmanageable at some point. So dealing with the smaller assignments and driving more churn becomes one of those issues. More part-time roles. As the assignments get smaller, that means we have to find more things for people to do. And also projects are being designed or defined in a way where part-time roles are embedded more commonly into the project. And this, of course, sounds great on paper when we draft up the estimates or create the project plan, but when it goes to actually executing against the organization, it's a little more problematic to deal with a proliferation of part-time roles. Maintaining continuity across these multiple phases, right? So if the project characteristic is to have more shorter phases, but more of them, then the expectation, though, is that we're going to carry forth some of those same people. And we know as resource managers, committing somebody to forward-based work when that work hasn't always been well-defined yet, does create, it hamstrings us and certainly eliminates some of the flexibility that we can do to keep the organization working optimally. And of course, it gets to that age-old question I like to ask, and that is, how many ways can you slice a resource? When the assignments are smaller, when we go to a little more part-time, when we're trying to keep people involved in the original project that they worked on, how many ways can you slice a PM? How many ways can you slice a solution architect or an implementation consultant or a developer, right? That, every time, as I always say, every time you take a slice out of somebody's time in a normal work day, normal work week, it's not as clean as taking 100% and dividing it 4 ways and you get 25%. The reality is you get 20% because the ability for somebody to change gears and switch their mindset from one project to another or one client to another, you lose something in the process, and the effectiveness of that resource goes down. So for this particular area, what can you do about it? We have to reestablish some parameters around things like part-time assignments and how much a resource can be sliced. Potentially work with the project managers to find better ways to chunk up the project work. Don't just settle for peanut butter spreading, if you will, or lack of effective contouring. This is an area where I see more and more activity to get more engaged with the project manager or influence the way projects are being designed and allocated and planned, so that it's not a unthoughtful, just I need them for 100 hours over this period, so I'm just going to spread that time. And then as you get into it, you realize this person's not really very busy one week and busy the next. You're going to have to make the effort to do more contouring or resource load leveling. And of course, we have to manage higher churn. And what the impact this has is our resource manager to staff ratio might have to be revisited. Again, in more stable environments, that ratio can be higher. But when you have a higher churn environment with smaller assignments and quicker turn on projects, that ratio probably has to come down. And you have to talk to the folks, some of your stakeholders, to say that, look, I might have been able to manage a ratio of, say, 1 to 100, 1 to 80 before, but in this high churn environment, I'm going to have to bring it down to 175, 170, or 70 or 75, or maybe even lower in some cases. And some of the things we're seeing too from some of the customers we work with is potentially think about enabling more staff autonomy and setting schedules. Sometimes the work gets so granular that we as resource management, we can't really get to that level of detail. It's too granular. And if that's the case where you might consider, again, looking for the staff to take on a certain amount of autonomy about on a given day or week, where should they be allocating their time to get the most billable or most worked hours or productive hours out of their week. In some cases, we can't micromanage them at too low of a level. So we've seen that start to appear more and more from the client. The next key trend I want to talk about is that delivery organizations are leveraging more agile development and project-based approaches to execute their projects, as well as the way they're staffing projects. This is clearly the case, in enterprise IT and internal projects, but it's getting to be more and more. We're seeing it more and more even in client-facing delivery as well. And certainly, as large, complex organizations with large centers of expertise or development centers that are supporting that client delivery. So how is this impacting us? Well, the work is planned and organized into quick bursts or sprints to enable more iterative work. Some of you are familiar with Agile. This is not news to you. But again, we have to think of this with the mindset of resource management. So work planned as part of a sprint may come from one or many clients and or projects, right? So we almost have to think of it no longer as I work for a client or I'm working on this project. To some degrees, we're breaking that paradigm in some cases, and we have to say that there is a different newly defined unit of work that might be based on the function I play, or the solution I'm working on, or the business function that I'm supporting. Again, because trying to align it slightly differently, because this is the way some of the project managers and the delivery teams are trying to better optimize the Agile method. There is a much shorter planning cycle with less longer-term certainty in terms of who is going to do the work on which project. So the Agile kind of puts a little more, certainly puts more dynamic planning into play. And if you were to ask a project manager over one of these to say, well, will John Smith, be involved in X work in 2 months? Their answer is going to be, I don't know, and by design, I don't know yet. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Well, of course, as resource management, that's kind of very difficult to anticipate. So you can't just leave it blank, but again, we have to think of new ways to define future capacity within the constraints or constructs of Agile. It's also challenging to know how project work will be broken down into the various sprints and when it'll all be completed. Right? Because again, the nature of Agile is to be iterative, and there's some basic structure as to when done is done, but there's always that chance that the next sprint will get added, or 2 sprints, or things like that. I talked a little bit about how this impacts RM, but let's drill on that a little bit more. The reality is that resources aren't tied to specific clients or projects. We are RTM. We've worked with clients for, and when we start running into the Agile thing, we had to go through a bit of a learning process because a few years back we were pretty dogmatic about, hey, resources are assigned to projects, and we tried to hold on to that for a while. But as you get into this Agile world, you really have to step back from that and rethink it a little bit to say, how are people assigned and allocated? And maybe we have to think of it's a different work unit. And similarly, if you're using PSA tool or PTM tool to both manage your projects as well as your resources themselves, again, it may not simply align to I put somebody on a project or I put somebody on this task. That's very easy, the one-to-one. Potentially, again, the way you define what they're working against and how that assignment is showing up may have to change. Of course, we know there is more churn, but again, you have to, Agile really is by definition a high churn, a highly flexible delivery method, and so in a way you have to decide, what are those, I'll call them, I don't want to say arbitrary, that's not quite the right word, but you have to put in some boundaries as to what an assignment is. So you've got a couple dimensions here that I'm kind of laying out for you. One is you have to kind of sometimes rethink what that work unit is. It may not be project. It might be a functional group, or it might be a solution group. And then you also have to decide what is the assignment. How are you allocating them? It won't be to that maybe one specific sprint for that one particular project. It might be multiple sprints over multiple projects or multiple clients. And this all, of course, leads to more involvement needed for resource management. You can't simply attack it the same way of define it, leave it, walk away. There certainly has to be a higher degree of collaboration between resource management and the project management teams that are defining and driving these projects. And that's where we find once you do that, you will find the right solutions in terms of giving them the flexibility to, once somebody's allocated, they've got the flexibility to use those resources to meet the approach. But at the same time, you have to have your needs met as well, right? Because we have to make sure our capacity is used in the most productive way and that people are most productive and highly utilized. And we can't just let project managers kind of not give us the information we need to be able to forecast an outlook on that. And then we have to then also start to factor in skills and help to narrow the window for capacity planning. So we have to still stay focused on the roles and skills needed to get the work done. And so again, that's the part we kind of have to bring back to the table to the project management teams is, hey, we're trying to get you the right person. And so we can't just put people into a black hole and forget about them and let you kind of dictate what they do for long periods of time. Again, we're trying to make sure that we can measure capacity based on roles and skills as well. Our third trend is technology related, right? We definitely are seeing a lot of activity of companies looking to get more value from their technology to support resource management. In some cases, many people have technology already in place and trying to leverage or introduce resource management into an existing environment. In some cases, people are starting to shop around, but there's definitely, I'll call it a more, as resource management starts to come more to the forefront as a maturing function, now there is more and more, I'll call it the secondary effect of people now want to automate it and automate it well. And many times we're doing this against applications and environments that are already in place to already support our projects, and now we're trying to layer on this portion as well. So we'll give you a little context in terms of technologies and solutions, and maybe even bring a little history into it as well. We'll talk about the different categories that people have tried to do this with. Customer relationship management, front end. There's a time when people are, this is where the opportunities are. This is where we keep customers. This is also where maybe we keep some time. And historically, people have tried to potentially use this as a way to assign people or use the activity function and get people allocated to different things. But of course, CRM's got drifted more away to just customers, just opportunities, and just a quoting piece. Another area in the human capital management or human resource system has always contended a little bit for keeping track of resources. Of course, that's where we tend to keep the confidential information. In some cases, skills information, albeit I'm not as big a fan of that, but you have the skills, you have the competencies of the people. But of course, they've stopped short of trying to actually own the scheduling and allocation of those resources. So while again, those tend to be in the orbit of our solutions, and I've seen historically some attempts made, that's definitely fallen out of favor for human resources systems to really own resource management, just with all the calendaring and things like that. Probably the more dominant a few years back was the ERP, the enterprise resource planning platforms, the SAPs, Oracles of the world. They continue to, they've got huge horizontal footprints and continue to lure people into trying to do resource management out of those systems. I think that candidly, it can be challenging. In some cases, you will run into a lot of missing functionality and capability, partly because this isn't their core focus. The other part of it, too, of course, is the bias that these are supply chain systems, inherently financial systems, and they view human resource pretty similarly, or at least historically they have, as a mechanical resource, whether it's a server or a piece of machine or a part or a product. So those are all resources to them. And so when you hear resource management, you have to be a little careful, but we're actually talking about human beings and not a piece of software or hardware, too. Really the sweet spot that's evolved for resource management has been the PSA and PPM space. PPM really started more as enterprise project management, but now we're seeing over the last 2-3 years much more investment in the PPM space to really start to get the resource management piece right. I will say there's some vendors are really putting more into it, others are starting to come along, and others are not putting in the investment. So it's worth really scrutinizing that area to say who's really starting to put in the true resource management function capability. And I will say that the PSA space that supports generally more client-facing organizations really got I'll say the market leaders in understanding resource management at its most core. And again, these systems are more designed for client-facing delivery organizations, and there tends to be good functionality in there, and it's continued to improve quite a bit over the last 2 to 4 years. But it's really just the net of this is understand that the underlying DNA of your technology and what you have in your environment, and quite simply, don't try to make it do something it's not meant to do. And so hopefully this gives you a little perspective around that. And the last one, and I'm putting it in yellow because now this is the third time we've done this, and this is a repeat trend. And so it's in yellow and it's a repeat because, again, we work with clients all year long, and this continues to be a gap, but also one of the number one areas that customers want to address. How do I do a better job of forecasting my resource needs and doing good capacity planning so I'm ready to deliver the work that I'm being asked to deliver or I need to deliver? And I've actually shown this in the past. I'm going to show it again, that this really shows that on the left side, we tend to do annual business planning, which is all well and good to establish what some of the targets are and what sales or the demand side is expecting of us. And we try to align a rough head count that can support that. But as I always say, the minute January 2nd hits, we're in a living plan. That the demand will change, the business will change, it'll either go up or it will shrink, and we have to be able to dynamically change with that. We always hear the stories of I can't grow fast enough, but we also have to shrink a little bit when the business shrinks. And so that's really what this is about. It's not staffing in the moment, it's not planning once a year, it's about maintaining and managing a dynamic 3 to 6 month forward-looking plan of resources. I don't have time to go into all the details of how to make that work, but I will say again, this continues to be a challenge and a gap for many delivery organizations to overcome. And again, probably an area that's gotten a lot of our consulting energies have gone towards helping clients in this area. As you can see, it's not just about what work is coming, but the challenge really is that belies this area is that you have to actually map your supply against that demand. In other words, you have to see how, of the people I have available, how well does that overlay to the work that's coming in. And what you find is that some of that demand you can't get resources against because of the skill set, or maybe you're running short in a particular role or solution area. And so you have to look at that in a smaller context to say, I've got a problem in one area. Companies and organizations the size of Rob's, they can look at it on a macro view and say we're generally okay, supply and demand. But when you double click into the different solution areas, you're going to find some areas might have plenty of resources for the demand, while others are woefully short. And so really, capacity planning is not done. It's done at multiple levels, depending on your project-based and delivery organization. So I mentioned Rob, and I'll reintroduce Rob Spreadberry again. He is Global leader of operations for NCR Corporation. And I'm very pleased that he is able to join us because Rob and is leading, as part of his organization, a lot of resource management efforts over the last 12 plus months, and really happy to have Rob on board to share a little bit of his experiences that they're going through to get some of the improvements that they have. So with that, Rob, I will page forward and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, sound great.
Great. Okay, well, yeah, thanks for having us here. I'm excited to share a little bit about resource management and also see some of the trends that you're seeing across the industry. I think a lot of those have played themselves out very, very well within the NCR Professional Services group. So real quickly, NCR, we are probably the largest technology firm that most of you on the phone don't realize you already are familiar with. There's lots of fun facts and figures on the screen here, but you can think of NCR as the company that drives transactions that make your everyday easier. Maybe that means doing online ordering from your mobile phone for your favorite coffee or your favorite burrito. It might mean the way you check out at your grocery store or your local home improvement center. The thing that you're probably most familiar with, if you ever stop and look, is the ATMs and the financial transactions that we drive in branches and online during our online banking, and we're even in the airline industry. And our global professional services team, which is about 3,500 people, we're the ones that are implementing those solutions, whether they're hardware, software solutions, or PS customized projects. We're the ones that are turning that into reality, solving the problems for our customers, and most importantly, our customers' customers, which are all of us on the phone, eating at restaurants, using banks, shopping at retailers. So with that as the background, if we move forward, thank you. Where were we in NCR, and how did we get to have this need for better resource management? We've been transforming ourselves from a hardware-led firm to more of a software and services-led firm over the last 5-10 years, and we've been acquiring a lot of different software companies, and for the longest time over the last couple of years, we left those unintegrated and rolling along in their sort of prior existence. And we got to a point where we realized that we had, well over 3,000 people in, 50-something different countries working in 4 or 5 major different divisions. And much like Mark was saying, in isolation, any one of them might have been okay, but from a macro level, we weren't really able to see where we were running hot and where we were running cold, and how one part of the group that maybe had an excess capacity of a certain skill, how that could help solve problems for another team. So classic resource management dilemmas, right? How do we get off of manual process, spreadsheet-driven, localized decision making into something that is much more serious, right? We call ourselves a professional services organization, and we needed to just get far more professional around the way that we did our headcount planning, our capacity assessments, and all of that activity. So we had that goal. We also realized that across our teams, we were running the gamut of the projects, some of which Mark touched on in the trends. We had some that were operating in an agile manner. We had some that were working in a very traditional land a team on site at a customer for multiple years, and just keep them rolling. And so we had waterfall, we had agile, we had some projects that literally could be a day or 2 days, and some lasting many years. So a wide spectrum and an equally wide spectrum in terms of our maturity within our teams. So we really needed to come up with a better methodology, a better process to get all of the normal outputs that you would want, right? Better utilization, really driving across all of our groups and standardizing the process and the resource use. So if we go to the next one, we, I think we've been working with RTM probably from very shortly after they were born, well over 8-9 years now, and so it was an easy decision to engage with our with RTM on this resource management process. We knew that we needed to take the existing tool, to pick up on another point that Mark made. We had a tool, we have a PSA tool already, but we weren't getting the most out of it. So we had a tool, we had some good usage, we had some sort of process, but we weren't using that in the resource management way. We didn't have common roles and responsibilities in terms of what the demand side should be doing, what the supply side should be doing. So that's where we really were looking to standardize, right, and take these disparate teams that we've been acquiring over the last years and bring them all into one common method, one common process. We helped. We had the help from RTM in building that out, right? Getting those best practices that they have, combing back through our data and really assessing it to make the changes. We didn't have to throw a lot of things out. A lot of it was a very flexible approach to take what existing structure and data we had and make, the necessary modifications that, would allow us to keep going. Because as you can all imagine, with 3,500 employees, consultants out there, and being a publicly traded company, we couldn't just take a time out. So we needed something that would make a modification, but get us the answers that we needed. So we did that. We've got that rolling in PSA. We've standardized on the approach, on the roles and responsibilities. We've taken a lot of the cadence and the process that RTM has recommended from where they've deployed this in other ways, and now, thank you, we're rolling with this methodology. We've got the ability now, for some of our key practices to be able to see, how some of the more strategic practices are changing in terms of their demand versus their capacity. And that's been, a fallout, an intended fallout of this project. As I said, as we acquired all these firms, made all these acquisitions over the past years, obviously the company's strategic play is then to push harder on some of our offers that are more empowering to our customer base than others. And now having the ability within resource management to see which of those practices are doing, are seeing that uptick in demand, and then redeploy resources from one skill base to another, is playing itself out. So a lot of this is still playing out as we've taken a sort of a phased approach, rolling it out site by site, practice by practice, but it's all moving very quickly towards getting to a place where what used to be a drag people along and force them to do it mentality is now starting to pay off, that the field users are starting to see the benefit of this resource management process, which is always an easier way to roll things out when the users are demanding, if you pardon the pun, but are wanting the new process to help enable them, right? They see this as an avenue to get faster resources, faster staffing onto their projects out in the field from these practices and delivery organizations. So I think they're just taking a look at the time. I think I'll maybe pause there, Mark, and hand it back over to you, and then we'll open up for questions. Does that sound good?
Yep. Yeah, if anybody has a question for Rob, please log it, and we're going to save some time at the end for questions. So if you have one specifically for Rob and his situation, go ahead and log it in there, and we'll try to we'll save some time for that. So thank you, Rob. It's been a tremendous amount of work, and again, I think it's not just the mechanics of implementing resource management. I think you're right. At NCR, it's been about taming a very complex, large organizations and turning what seems to be people viewed initially as a nuisance to really starting to see now the value of how to get more out of those teams and get them more productive and get them more integrated to who's driving the demand across the world. So it's really exciting to see. Okay, so next I'd like to ask to speak to Randy Misselvick and talk more about the Resource Management Institute. Again, our goal, part of our objective of this is to, again, we've got a great audience here, and we want to continue to foster the resource management community, and I think the RMI really is our vehicle and your vehicle to do that. And so Randy's going to talk more about it and where it's heading. So Randy, the floor is
Wonderful.
yours.
Mark. Okay, Mark, can you hear me okay?
Yep, sound great.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the introduction, and also to Rob for taking the time to share the story at NCR as well. That case studies are always really helpful to people. I'm the managing director of the RMI. We launched the RMI back in July of last year. We've been doing certifications for resource management since early 2014, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But whether you're in enterprise IT or in the professional consulting services space, the research data from TSIA and the Gartner Group are very consistent in that project failures continue to run in rates of 35% or higher, and that's our projects either fail because of quality, they don't run on time, they run over budget, or some other reason. And in both cases, the research always tends to point to the same place. It's simply we can't seem to get the right person in the right place with the right skills at the right moment in time. So resource management is very central to our thinking for project-based businesses that are trying to improve how they manage their human capital with a focus on better project performance. So we announced the Resource Management Institute back in July, dedicated to the advancement of resource and workforce management thought leadership, best practices, standards, and the credentials we offer through our certification program, and tools and resources to help you do your jobs better. And Mark put it very well that building the community and getting more engagement from the industry around really tackling this problem that's gone on for far too long on how do we do a better job of managing resources, focus on better project performance. Again, whether you're in the PS in a technology company or you're an enterprise IT shop, your project-based work, whether you're doing waterfall or agile, can all benefit greatly from better resource management. So that's what the community is all about. So Mark, if you could advance me one slide there. So if you haven't been to our website, I would encourage you to do that. We give you opportunities to collaborate, to innovate, and to get educated. In the collaboration, examples are the events like we're running today. I'll talk more about that in a moment. And our community-based tools that are available, you ought to really check them out. They're terrific opportunities for you to engage with your industry peers. The innovation we offer for folks through not only our tool set, but templates and white papers and those sorts of things, and to educate and learn. And again, our certification program, RMCP, or our white paper library or things are wonderful opportunities that we provide through the RMI. And best of all, by the way, joining the RMI is free. Upper right-hand corner there, you see join the RMI. If you haven't joined, would encourage you to click on that link and join us and get access to the various things that we are doing in the resource management community. So 4 things, if I just was trying to summarize the benefits that you get for participating with this community is start with the opportunity to collaborate, and right in the center of that is networking with other RMs. That's one of the biggest benefits folks tell us is we've provided a great set of community tools to get to know other people in the industry. And so as you are tackling your resource management problems, we're providing you a way to communicate with industry peers in a very focused manner through this community. The communications mechanisms we provide, we pump out a newsletter on a quarterly basis, and usually that's populated with a paper that one of our RMI members has written on some case study that they've done or some idea that they've got that they'd like to share. And industry events like this, we run this event every year. We'll continue to do this. We've noticed, by the way, that the thing keeps getting exponentially larger each year, so we're happy that our objective of building the community seems to be working. We also run quarterly power-up sessions. Now, this particular session today is doubling up as a power-up session, but watch the website for our announcements on future power-up sessions. We run these 30-minute, very focused events where we tackle some RM topic that seems to be on everybody's mind, and often have guests to talk about case studies. And again, we mix these up between the professional services consultative space and the enterprise IT space as well, so that we're trying to tackle, again, organizations that are doing project-based work. Our certification program, RMCP, if you haven't looked into it, I encourage you to do that. We're up to 44 different companies now that have invested in time to put their resource managers, in many cases it will be hundreds of people through the program, but it's the industry's first and only certification program for resource managers, designed to help you, essentially bring both a commercial grade methodology to your businesses for resource management, which is you get through the program, but you also get access to a world-class set of tools, templates, and other things as a result of people going through the program. And of course, you get 3 days of very focused education and learning from the experts in resource management. We offer the course both in online and in-class versions, and again, you can read more about that on the website. And then lastly, as far as resources, those people who have gone through the RMCP training actually get access to a special resource center with tools and templates and special articles, and we've created a cool portal that gets you, I'll say, more direct access in an aggregated way to information that will help you do a better job of managing resources. So, and then last, I want to just mention, Mark, on the next page is our outreach is, again, the RMI is intended to be a community of resource managers. We recognize at both RTM Consulting and at the Institute that we're not the only ones with great ideas in resource management, and so we're getting contributions from lots of different places. We have an advisory board that meets with the RMI every single month, and you can read their names and the companies that they represent. And again, these are all project-based businesses that do fantastic work, and so we're happy to have those companies represented on our board, and they're giving us input and advice on standards for the methodology, our global resource management methodology, building the community, industry trends, how we're serving the RMI community, and so again, it's all about our outreach and trying to bring in and build this community. I hope all of you will if you're not an RMI member, again, join. It's free, and look at the many different resources we have available that can be helpful, including our certification program. We've got an online course coming up, by the way, starting next week. It runs 2 hours a day once a week for 6 weeks, or you can go to an in-class version of that we're having here in Cincinnati that's coming up in the second quarter. So anyway, that's a bit about the Resource Management Institute. I hope you'll help us continue to grow and build the community. So with that, Mark, I think that was my last slide. If you just go ahead and let's. Yep, I think we're at the Q&A section.
Thanks, Randy. All right, good. So just a couple thoughts before we get to Q&A. Just leave you with some thoughts around action. First of all, evaluate the effectiveness of your resource management technology. Are you getting what you need? And don't settle for working on spreadsheets and kind of hacking your way through some imperfect technology. There is good technology out there. The vendors are putting investment money into that, and I think you need to, if you're not happy with what you got, you need to talk to your IT department or start exploring. Review your processes against the SaaS delivery model and the agile environment, right? a good time to kind of rethink, is the same old ways we approach things still true? Are the rules of engagement that we've defined still valid? Are the way we define allocations still valid? Do we need to get more collaboration with the project management team to get rationalized around some of these things? Take on capacity planning. Again, I know it's something people moan and groan about or wish they had, and it's not, if it was easy, everybody would have it done by now. And it's not easy. It sounds simple, just get this data put together, but there's a lot to it. You have to collaborate with stakeholders, including people in different departments or the sales department, people like that are driving the demand. And it's a complex process to maintain, but has huge benefits to running a profitable organization. And last, of course, is join the community. Right? Again, Rand just laid out that there's a lot of things that you can benefit from, and really it's free to dip your toe into the RMI and start becoming more and more part of the community and contributing and getting something from it. Okay. So with that, we'll move to some questions. We'd like to spend, again, the next 7 or 8 minutes or so and just trying to field any questions that have come up along the way. And so with that, I'll ask Thomas if you could help facilitate or present any questions that you've seen come across the board.
Yes, we'll do. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for sharing that with us today. We have had quite a few questions come in, and as Mark said, we'll use the remaining time here to cover this in our Q&A session. I do want to mention there have been a few questions about the deck again, and just to let everyone on the line know, there is a PDF copy of the deck available. You have a handouts window pane there in your GoToWebinar panel. Hit that little plus to open up that window pane, and you can download the deck right there from your GoToWebinar panel. So just want to cover that one more time for folks. Okay, let's get started here on some questions that came in, Mark, and this one just came in talking about these overall trends and specifically mentioning SaaS and Agile. Do these trends result in lower utilization and productivity of resources?
Well, they can. Historically, you see that when organizations that are in a quote-unquote higher churn environment, the risk is that you're leaving more white space because it's very hard to get all those puzzle pieces to fit together to eliminate as much of the white space. And by white space, I mean unproductive time of your resources. And so it can have a negative impact, and you could start to see that slide. And I think that's where resource managers or organizations have to be a little smarter about recognizing that the business reality that you're trying to operate in, which might be very valid, but also the cause and effect. So there's two things that I think I mentioned. One is when you might have to look at your resource management to staff ratio, because it may require more of an active resource management to get in there and eliminate that white space. But also more kind of collaboration with the project management team in terms of defining reasonable project structures and resource assignments and allocations that, again, can play both well to run lean, profitable projects, but at the same time not lead a lot of unproductive resources sitting around waiting for in between their assignments. So it can have a negative impact, but the organizations that recognize they have to take kind of corrective steps to address that can allow. But clearly, an organization that puts developers out on projects for 12 months at a time is probably going to run a little higher in their productive utilization than an organization doing nothing but 2-week fast projects. So in some cases, inherently built into the productive utilization targets, there will be some difference, but it shouldn't be so low as to be not profitable.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Rob, I've got a few that came in here for you, certainly with the content you were able to present for us today. So I'll send this one to you. It said, could Rob speak more about the interlock process and what does that look like?
Sure. Yeah, I'll kick that one off and then you to add any other comments. But the way we're running that right now is it's a monthly process that we where we pull around a virtual table both sides of the equation here, which is the supply our practices and our centers of excellence, and the demand side, which are our field organizations out in front of the customers. And using the data and the tool that or the data that's coming out of the PSA tool, we get a set of reports out that sort of says these are the summary movers over the next 30, 60, 90 days that are going to cause some change to our demand. Right? We've got this center of excellence here that's working. This project that's rolled up and is going to be released. Individuals and this other project here that's going to be starting and has a need for staff. We obviously do that at a very summary level because we're looking at hundreds of projects. But the summary of that, we pull out a couple key items to make sure that both sides are aligned, particularly on the demand side, that anything new is on track to being signed, and then from the supply side, that any changes that they are doing are lined up, whether it's from staffing or redeploying skills. So it's a cycle. There's a number of steps that lead up in front of that summary interlock that get managed by the project managers and the resource management process team.
And I think what's key there, Rob, and very similar to other organizations, is you're in a matrix model, or you moved to it even a couple of years ago, where the people generating the demand or defining the demand are different than the people that are providing the resources to do the work. And so when you have that matrix model, you have to force these interlocks so that the demand side and supply side can get on the same page. And that's been a learning process, and I think an eye-opener, I think, for some of the people involved.
Okay, thanks, guys. Mark, I'll stick with you on this one. How can we better forecast if the data about future needs is not very reliable?
Well, that's what the interlock's about to a large degree. We hear that all the time. That and we saw it at NCR where people will say, well, the pipelines, the sales data, the stuff coming is the most problematic typically, and that's because it's in the hands of salespeople or it's just simply less reliable because of customer the nature of the demand, and even if it's internal IT, it could be shifting business priorities. So how can we rely on that as a basis? Well, the fact is you need to, and and part of that is I'll call it the process and the organizational behavioral part of executing resource management and the interlock, which is you hold the right people accountable for that data, and you simply say, I'm prepared to deliver upon the mandate or what this demand is telling me to do. But if it changes, you also are accountable to tell me that, and I will react in accordance. So I think that's the biggest area that people feel helpless, but really need to reverse that trend to say that the people generating or defining the demand change their minds, or it's fickle data, or it's unreliable. You simply have to stop and say, I can't operate in that kind of environment. I can't do what I need to do to accomplish our goals if that's the case. And that's really a big part of what resource forecast capacity planning kind of methodologically entails, is to bring that organizational focus as well across the different groups and stakeholders to, I'll say, attain the demand and get it to where everybody understands it and can plan to it.
And Mark, I want to add to that on the enterprise IT side, it's really the same issue. It's just the internal business demands, and what we see a lot in the RMI are organizations that they don't have a good, well-defined RM discipline, and they don't have the data to argue, debate, pick your adjective, as they are trying to lock down a plan, and so they have unpredictable requests from the various aspects of the business. This is a separate, these are the more discretionary projects versus the we'll call the operational, keep the lights on kind of stuff, and so finding a way to build not only a process that gives you the data to help people understand what the capacity of the organization is to deliver, but then have some interlock with the businesses and which project we're going to prioritize over those that we're not is really, really important. And it gets to the heart of actually tackling that forecast problem by becoming more data-based and more collaborative in how you develop those, how you're going to use your existing capacity.
Okay, thanks, Randy. We are right at actually a couple minutes past the top of the hour, so I want to be respectful of time. We did have questions coming in, and we do want to get to those, and we might have to follow up on those by email as well. But we had quite a few RMCPs on the line. I know that, our Resource Management Certified Professionals, and I do want to remind them that this content is PCU eligible, and there's a kind of a refresh there on how to claim the content for this PCU. And Mark is scrolling through some of the contact information for both RTM Consulting and I think for the Resource Management Institute as well. Again, we do want to be respectful of your time. I want to thank everyone today for joining us, spending the last hour with us talking about the state of resource management. Appreciate the questions that came in. We are going to, yeah, Mark, can you go back to the RMCP slide real quick? We had a question came in about that. There we go. So yeah, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. Appreciate the hour of your time. Randy, Mark, and Rob, thank you for spending the hour as well and sharing your expertise. And with that, guys, I'd like to sign off. That's it on our end. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.